Can you hear us?
Yes, Chief, we can hear you. And Chairwoman Senna, we are now live.
All right, thank you for that, Julian. I'm going to give it just a few more minutes so that everyone can get situated, as I know we are starting this as a webinar, which is a bit different from how we normally do. So I'm going to give it a few more minutes so everyone can get situated. All right, I think we are finally getting situated here. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Public Safety Committee of the City Council. All members of the committee are present via Zoom, and Councillor Pat Davis will actually be joining us shortly. This is a remote or online meeting where all participants will be on video or audio conference. We are holding this meeting remotely to allow everyone to participate safely while we are conducting business under a public health emergency. We appreciate your patience. Members of the public, city staff, and the media will have the ability to view this meeting live through YouTube. This live stream can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, computers. For those watching on the live stream, thank you for joining us. Written comments were received for today's meeting and were provided to members of the committee. Members of the public will be able to address the committee if they have signed up for public comment per the rules established on the agenda last week. Members of the public will be moved from the Zoom waiting room into the meeting once we begin public comment. They will remain muted until they are called upon to speak, at which point they will have 2 minutes to provide comments to the committee. After that, they will again be muted. We will start with public comment. We have one individual signed up to speak. Will the Zoom moderator, Mr. Moya, please move in the one member of the public who signed up to speak?
Madam Chair, he has been moved in.
Thank you, Mr. Moya. Hello to the individual signed up and joining us for public comment. If you're watching through your YouTube live for this meeting, please mute it at this time. Here are the public comment ground rules. Comments are to be addressed to the committee, members only. Please keep your comments germane to the topic of today's meeting. Any disruptive conduct or non-germane commentary will result in removal from the Zoom meeting room. I will also ask that we remain respectful of one another. There will be a 2-minute time limit. The timer will start once you begin speaking. Then the Zoom moderator, Mr. Moya, will let you know when your time is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Ernest Juvent is signed up to speak. Ernest, please unmute yourself and feel free to turn your video, and your 2 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the Public Safety Committee. I and other citizen volunteers, many with the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Center Task Force, spoke regularly with City Council in 2010 and 2011 regarding the reform of our police department with its decades-long record of abuse and excessive force. After December 5th, 2020 hearing of IMR 12 before District Court Judge Browning, it was clear that the DOJ reform of APD is in complete failure. The Keller administration has aided and abetted that failure on many levels, most egregiously with the appointment of Harold Medina as interim chief of APD. Medina is exactly the type of officer that mobilized citizens for federal intervention a decade ago, a careerist, no due process executor of a child given safe haven by APD. His appointment is the icing on the cake of the whitewashing of APD reform by the administration and a potent illustration of their complete disdain for citizen-led reform and citizen-led policing. We know from public speech by former Albuquerque City Council person Ray Garduno that many non-citizen organizations put behind closed door pressure on City Council. I know this as well from off-the-record comments of a current councilor. My request today is for you to put aside special interest and on behalf of the community, bring all the resources of your office to aid the public interest in the reform of our criminal police department. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trudvant. Madam Chair, that concludes general public comments.
Thank you for that. The public commentator is being moved out of the Zoom meeting at this time, but can continue to observe the meeting on YouTube Live or through the Zoom webinar. First up on the agenda is the public safety annual update presentations from the administration. We're going to go first with APD with Chief Medina, followed by Roger Ebner of the Emergency Management. Then following Mr. Ebner will be Chief Dow with AFR. So without further ado, Chief Medina.
Madam Chair, members of council, thank you for allowing us this afternoon to make a presentation that is going to kind of be a recap of what we had occur this past year. We're going to focus on 4 areas. Number 1, crime control. That is our number 1 concern for the city. That's the topic that affects most citizens of the city of Albuquerque. Number 2, our settlement agreement, where we are at with our settlement agreement at this point in time. Number 3, outreach. We're going to specifically look at youth outreach. As we know, the youth are a building block for the future, and it's one of the areas where we focus our outreach. And the 4th part that we're going to briefly go over is just our recruiting campaign and strategies from now till June to get us to the numbers that we wanted to be and what council has funded us for. So if you look at the first slide, does everybody have a copy of the, do we have a way to share that?
And Chief Medina, I do believe Mr. Moya is working on that, and all councilors were emailed the presentation.
Okay, so the first slide, there we go. The first slide, if we go down to the property crime slide, property crimes accounts for 75% of all crime in Albuquerque. People are more likely to feel the effects of property crime than any other type of crime, and property crime is down 20% in the last 3 years. As we go to the next slide, we'll talk about violent crime. Violent crime accounts for 15% of all crime in Albuquerque. Most people are not directly affected by violent crime, but these crimes really make people feel unsafe. Homicide, robbery, shootings. Most target repeat and violent offenders to keep them off the streets. We must be proactive, and we must not stop at being proactive in our relentless pursuit of these individuals who are committing these crimes. Right now, Albuquerque is just 2 out of 67 of the largest cities where violent crime has not spiked this year as it has in other cities of our size and that are considered major cities. What are we doing to address some of our violent crime issues? Is we have our citywide anti-crime operations. These started in mid-August. We've arrested 550 offenders, recovered 86 firearms, and during this time, we've also recovered 67 stolen vehicles. The reason that we focus on, and we mentioned stolen vehicles, is in 2017, when we came back, that was our #1 goal at the time, was stolen vehicles. Albuquerque was #1. We have then dropped since #2, and we'll get into some slides that really explain our stolen vehicle problem. We're also working with our Metro 15 operations. That's the next slide. And we work with the prosecutor's office to target offenders who we can successfully prosecute. It's a simple fact that we want to invest our resources in those individuals that we're more likely to kick off the streets for longer periods of time. It's just wisely investing our resources to make sure that we go after the individuals that we're going to have success with. And it takes more patience, but the patience pays off, and we've had 50 arrests since the program has started. The violence interruption program is exactly as it states. It's a process of us intervening. We know that if somebody is the victim of a shooting, they're either going to be there's a high likelihood they're going to be a victim again, or they're going to be an offender in a shooting. The VIP has made 74 custom notifications. That's when we visit individuals at their location to talk to them about not retaliating and not being involved in any further shootings. If you want to go to the next slide. Message: community values human life and the lives of group members, but they must choose to stop the violence is kind of the message we put out with these individuals. Tomorrow I'll be going out and we'll be making some notifications, another series of notifications with individuals in the community. Of the 74 individuals contacted, not one has picked up a gun, and 24 have reached out for services, and 41 service referrals have been made. This is about taking them out of the cycle of violence, getting them out of the process that they're involved in. This really went live in August, kind of about an August, September timeframe also. So when we talk about reductions in shootings from August till now, by us getting that number for the year down, these are some of the programs we think that helped us. The anti-crime initiatives and the violent interruption program are some of the keys that helped us start to get that peak that was going on down back to numbers that we had in the previous years. Auto theft by year comparison, if we go to the next slide, we know that auto theft in 2017 was the #1 issue the community was facing. We were #1 in the country. The metro area had almost 10,000 cars stolen, with 8,000 coming from the city of Albuquerque. You see in 2017, we had 8,157 cars stolen. In 2018, we reduced that to 5,563. In 2019, we reduced it again to 4,926. And in 2020, we're at 3,568, which is another trend for us lowering this number. It looks like we're going to be close to another double-digit reduction, and we'll just have to see how the rest of the year turns out. But if you go to the next, chart, that this really shows where we were as a city. I mean, you can see how we've continually declined the number. Of course, we have about 14 days that are going to add into that, but we average about 50 to 60 stolen cars a week. So you can look at that, 3,568, maybe going up another 150. We're still going to be well below the 2019 numbers for a third year in a row where we have a reduction in auto theft numbers. The next slide just kind of breaks it down by the quarters over the year. The past years, as you can see, our last quarter has some of the lowest numbers, so it's consistent. Early spring, January, February, March, typically when we see warm-up thefts, we have some of our highest numbers. So we continue to work on this and ensure that we're lowering our auto theft numbers. We're going to move on to our court settlement agreement. There's a link to it provided. If anybody hasn't ever read the settlement agreement or wondering about it, we could go to the next slide for that. And we'll skim over that once people have a chance, and we'll go to the settlement agreement. And I think the most important thing here to remember is the settlement agreement is capturing several categories. Use of force, their investigation, ensuring that We're tracking it, we're making corrections, we're being transparent about it. Specialized units such as the utilization of SWAT, SID units, other units, crisis intervention, making sure that we're moving forward with having a good program that helps us deal with those that are going through a mental crisis. Policies and training, making sure that we're developing and good, strong policies, making sure that we have a process for doing that, making sure that we're training our individuals and the curriculum is developed properly. Misconduct, complaints, how they're taken, the investigations and the adjudications. Staffing, management, and supervision, that really has to do a lot with, for the most part, with what our supervisors are doing. Are they holding their individuals accountable for administrative functions during the course of their shift? Did they show up with their proper firearm? Did they do a monthly inspection of them and their equipment? Did we have a ratio of 8 officers to 1 supervisor at the most? Recruiting and selection and promotions. We know that we want to be diverse in our recruitment efforts. We want to make sure that we recruit the right individuals, that we see all the red flags and don't select individuals and processes where we shouldn't. And we make sure that we have a strong promotional process that takes into account basically somebody's career. Officer assistance and support, just as they making sure that the mental health of our officers is met and that we give them the support they need when they need it. And the last part is community engagement and oversight. In all, if we go to the next slide, it's 344 paragraphs. 276 of those paragraphs have a measure for us for compliance. The 3 levels of compliance: primary, secondary, operational. If we go to the next sheet, we'll see that in IMR, from IMR 11 to IMR 12, we still are at 100% primary. That means we've developed the proper policy and procedure. If you look 91 on the secondary compliance, we did lose some there because of some struggles that the academy had. We have made some corrections there, but we only lost 2% and we're back to 91%. Operational, we went from 66 to 64. There is a possibility that there wasn't the change in leadership at the police department through midway through IMR 13. So those numbers potentially could still go down, but we're hoping that some of the changes we've made and the processes we've already developed is going to minimize that. That's where we are with the settlement agreement. We know that we're working with DOJ right now to help us get some external investigators who can kind of teach and show our investigators how these investigations on force need to be done, what the expectations are, and make sure that we're moving towards compliance in that area. We're setting up internal processes to make sure that if somebody's not holding their individual officers accountable, that it's flagged and that it's moved up the chain and that we see that. And we're also working to ensure that we develop our investigators, not just for force, but in all areas. We're hoping by June to have the first ever Investigators Academy where our people actually get a kind of certification that they're investigators, or in the past, we just basically was a lot of on the job passing the baton of type of training. Community engagement is the next slide. There are currently 24 schools involved in the imprint program. This basically a lot of officers go out and they work with the students. In 2020, 747 kids were engaged. New imprint officers picked up. We had 5 more officers trained up in this program for a total of 25 officers who basically can go out to the schools and work with kids in a variety of different outreach. They work with APS on other projects. They delivered 22 Thanksgiving meals. They worked with some community partners and Cottonwood Mall and Dream Big, Albuquerque Fire Rescue to gather 100 Thanksgiving meal boxes. They helped Highland High School for a turkey Thanksgiving meal box, 17 boxes, kind of a duplicate of that last one there. They have ornament events where they did a lot of different work with ornaments and they were delivered to different places like Carrie Tingley Hospital. Christmas card events, students from 3 schools colored and created cards for senior centers, 750 cards out to the community especially the retirement centers. Shop with the Cop, Heroes for the Holidays. They worked with Cottonwood Mall. They also did some other programs where they gave a total of 20 kids gift bags, and they chaperoned officers at kids as they shopped at the different malls. If we go down to the next page, let's go one more. One more page. I got ahead there. We're going quickly. One more page. Okay. Our big thing was we had changed the camps in 2018. In the past, APD youth camps were done at the APD Academy only, and basically it was 50 cops kids for the most part that showed up, and it really wasn't a form of community engagement. We changed this to out to the community, so now it occurs in the 4 quadrants of the city, one camp plus one more older camp that's geared towards some of our older kids in the community, and each day they work with these kids. This year, due to COVID, we had to go virtually online with it. Early in the process, I talked to Lieutenant Legendre, and we ended up doing 31 videos, 1.5 hours a day for 5 days that we were able to get these kids through it. And for our first run at a virtual camp, we had 100 youth participate in the program. So we're pretty proud that we're able to make that adjustment and work with some of the kids in our community. I'm going to go to the next slide. They included videos from SWAT, K9 bombs, horses, shared lunch and discussed APD's core values. APD Wellness Coordinator provided youth with exercise videos. They started each day with PT, and we did this in partnership with the fire department and with the National Guard. They provided some other type of training like fire safety, gun safety, and narcotics. We could go to the next page. Our goal this year is right now, in December of 2017, we were at about 836 officers. We're now at 975. We had 9 just graduate this past week from the Lateral Academy. We have 51 in the cadet class that graduates in March. We're hoping to have 15 laterals seated for a spring class. That's at 0 now because they're focusing on the 124. The 124, we're hoping to have 75 seated. We already have 36. We've been averaging about 15 to 20 at chief selection each month. So if we maintain those numbers, we will get to the 75, and that'll be one of our largest academy classes. And as long as time can, most of us can remember, the attrition from the academy, we know that everybody that starts the academy doesn't finish the academy. So we have 13 there. That brings us to an 11, 12 number. You got to take into consideration there that we probably could lose up to 20 to 25 people due to retirements in the first half of the year. So we may come in just a little bit under the 1100 mark, but we'll have to see with what retirements look like and how our training continues to go on our recruiting. So with that, it's a brief overview of what we had for this past year and where we're at now as a department and what our goal is, especially with recruiting. This next year, we really want to focus on reducing our shootings as we have these last 3 months and developing that culture of accountability and doing work just because it's our everyday job and not necessarily it being an anti-crime operation. We're also working on some quality control measures, reference overtime, making sure that we're looking at it ourselves proactively on our own at the beginning each quarter, rather than waiting for something to occur and it be in the front page of the newspaper. So we are trying to be as proactive, and I think that's the #1 culture we want to develop for this department, is that culturally we're very proactive, whether it be with crime, with monitoring our budget, monitoring our overtime, knowing what kind of fleet funding we're going to need, knowing how we're going to get to our recruiting numbers to make sure that we have enough people coming into the department to continue the growth that we're being funded. And with that, we'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Chief Medina. And looks like Councillor Davis is joining us as well. And just as a reminder for councillors to use the raise the hand button so I can call on you. And first up, we have Councillor Jones and Councillor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, Chief Medina, you say we have 975 sworn officers now. Of that 975, how many are working the streets and actually in crime? How many are in the academy? Give me a percentage. How many are actually patrolling, either on foot, in car, and how many are teaching classes in the academy, serving on committees and panels, and that do not require or have personal contact with our citizens on the streets?
You know, I'm glad you, Madam Chair, Councillor Jones, I'm glad you brought that question up. Cecily Barker will be sending the document now. It's a new monthly form that we've developed. It's still work in progress. And in that monthly form is a distribution of patrol officers to each of the area commands. And those are going to be our officers that are responding to calls for service. So if I believe that Cecily's going to be pulling those numbers up and we'll get back. But right now, I think we've provided some of this information in the past, and some of the numbers will be included in this monthly. So just give us 1 second. Let's see if we can pull up, or if we could come back, we could give you some of those numbers of how our officers are distributed right now.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, we hope to circle back to that. Councillor Bassan, then Councillor Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions that came up from that PowerPoint. First, though, Chief, thank you so much for particularly the status report. I think that's on par with some of the questions that we've been asking and being able to see. And I realize that we're going to get a little bit more fine-tuned information coming up. But in regards to that as well, as to what Councillor Jones was asking, I'm wondering too, do you have an estimate? And I know that there's no final number, and I'm sure it changes regularly, but I don't see any kind of attrition for any kind of retirements or other people leaving after time. Do we have a general average percentage of what that looks like?
It seems like our numbers are anywhere from 20 to 30, with 25 being a good number for the first half of the year. We do tend to see more people retire in the second half, especially around December timeframes. And the second half, we seem to see a retirement rate of 30 to 40. We have had a number of terminations and other people leave the department this year, but we're expecting that the first half that we could lose, if it's in average with what we've seen in the past, 25 to 30.
Thank you. Chief, is that with 30 to 40 per half of the year or the whole year?
Per half of the year.
So
generally
25, yeah. 25 for half of the year is what we're looking at.
25 for the first half, and we do see an increased amount, it seems like, in the second half of the year.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few more if that's all right. Thank you. Chief, what is the acronym, please forgive me, what is the acronym IMPRINT for? What does that mean?
I know what it is. We'll get the exact acronym sent out to council later. I don't know exactly what the word.
Okay, I haven't heard of it before, so I'm curious, when we have 25 officers, is that 25 officers are designated full-time for this program, or they kind of dabble in it? What is the expectation with that?
It's a secondary duty that they do when they have time, and most of them average about a couple hours here and there during the course of the month, depending on if there's school in session, if there's not school in session. It's not a permanent job. It's kind of like how we're building the ambassador program, or kind of how we built some of our underage drinking efforts funded by council, is where we have individuals do this as a collateral job, and they take care of it either with a little bit of overtime, or they adjust during the course of their shift to get these activities taken care of. And Imprint doesn't stand for anything specific. It's just the name of the program.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Chief. And then when you were talking about I think you said the investigator training, hopefully rolling out June-ish next year. And I love that idea. I'm absolute proponent of it. If we can get an update as you all start seeing what that might look like, I think that would be something we would all be very interested in.
We're trying to move on it really quickly, Counselor, and I think we set a deadline of February. We met this morning about it to develop the core curriculum that it has to contain. And the goal is to train a general investigator, which is something we've never done in the past. And for every investigator to have a certification, once we get them with that basic training, we could then add in the specialized training to their specialized areas. And we could start offering that to individuals before they go to investigations in the future as a means of career development.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I think that sounds fantastic. And Madam Chair, just one more. My last question, Chief, is there any kind of thought process between COVID this year and everybody being at home as to maybe that's also part of why there's less auto theft, burglaries?
Madam Chair, Councilor Bazan, I think that it's really difficult. I think at the beginning when COVID started, if you looked at our April, May, June numbers, we saw a lot of the crimes go down. Even shootings, homicides, we almost broke even at that point in time, especially with shootings. But since then, I think there's been some COVID fatigue, and we've seen numbers steadily increase from July through now in a variety of ways. And I guess the best way I could sum this up is if somebody's willing to steal a car, I don't think they're willing to obey a public health order. So I think that we still have a lot of criminals nationwide. The trend is they're seeing great increases in violent crime. So I think it's really hard for us to give a definite yes or no. But I do want to say that our auto theft unit is consistently out there. They're probably one of our most proactive units we have in this department. And they're making arrests, it seems like, daily when they have operations of individuals who are stealing cars.
Thank you, Chief. That makes sense. That's fair. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, I really had approximately the same question as Councilor Bassan. I was, and maybe you could just fine tune this and get it to us later. Over the last 10 years, what's the average retirement number? It sounded to me like it's in the vicinity of 70 annually. So I would just like confirmation of that, because we subtract that from what we're talking about. And I appreciate your very optimistic outlook, and I hope it's correct.
Stringy. Doing good. Okay.
Hello. Well, you see something new every day. Where was I? Yeah, annual average retirement, just so that we have a good sense of where we are. But if your projections are correct and it is 70, then we're still 67 ahead. So hallelujah for that, if we can pull that off. But thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Councilor. And Madam Chair, Councilor Jones, we have right around 510 that are taking calls for service right now in one form or another in the department, assigned to field services. And I want to say that investigations is right around the 200 mark at this point in time. And we're 185 for investigations and
professional standards.
And professional standards is 145, but that's total number of employees, and that includes CIT and civilians. And I think the number to look at the most is we've added to investigations over the past couple of years. The criminal investigation side, we had a homicide unit that had 5 detectives. I think when I got back, they're now at 12. They're now should have about 12 if they're not in the selection process, but they're allocated 12 detectives. And the reason why we give detectives a portion with every bunch and not just out to the field is you have to develop people in those units. And it makes no sense for us to grow the field and then all of a sudden we say, add in 7 homicide detectives and we're trying to get 7 people trained up at the same time. So there is a method to making sure that as we add resources to the department that we're feeding them into the different areas so that we control the growth and we could get individuals trained in their specialties. We're hoping this academy will help us move that along faster also.
And since this was originally Councillor Jones's question, I want to make sure that that was sufficient. Councillor Jones?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief. I appreciate that information.
Madam Chair, just with one last thing, like I said, we're sending out our first monthly report from APD. It's going to have some information on there. It has a report from field services this month. Next month, we'll be adding in another Bureau investigations. There is a section where if council asks questions, we could start answering them in this monthly report. So there's a written monthly response. And if anybody has any ideas how we could improve this report, just let us know. And we're more than willing to listen and to modify the report as needed. So it should be getting to your email boxes. It may already be in your email boxes. So that's our first attempt at a monthly to kind of keep council updated. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And before you leave, Councillor Benton, was there anything I see that your hand's raised?
Yeah, sorry, Madam Chair, to come back, but yeah, just to clarify once again the numbers, Chief, and I appreciate you being so forthcoming and about these, but so 510 on the average, 510 officers out taking calls on patrol, plus 195 in investigations. Is that about right?
Yes, that's about right.
So that's a lot of, I think the common perception is there are way too many officers sitting, sworn officers sitting around. I don't purport that any of them are sitting around, but I do oftentimes ask the question, how can we backfill some of these positions with civilians? Which ones are those positions where we can backfill them with civilians and then get sworn officers on the street? But besides that, that's pretty good numbers if you're roughly, at 700 out of 975 are taking calls. That sounds a heck of a lot better. They're not taking calls, but they're working against crime, including investigation. Then that to me means, that many people are working in crime prevention as opposed to all good things we know to train officers and to deal with the CASA settlement. And that's why I'm always asking you, what is our headroom to get civilians into some of those positions? And I'm always going to be supportive of that to just, increase the people power while putting more officers on the street. So thank you, Madam Chair. No question there, Chief, just that's 2 cents worth.
Thank you for that, Councillor Benton. I will say, in thinking about these presentations for this committee, I wanted to make sure that we have an overall kind of picture coming into the next year. So I'm looking forward to the monthly updates, Chief Medina, and really appreciate this presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and everybody have a nice evening.
Next up, we have Mr. Roger Ebner with the Emergency Management. I know that the presentation regarding the vaccination management was sent to all of the councillors. So, Mr. Ebner?
Chairwoman Sena, also members of the council, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today about the current state of our vaccine distribution planning. On the next slide, you'll see what I would do is put our current planning into some historical context. We did not start planning to respond to this virus just the last month or the last few months, but you'll see on the next slide that OEM has been administering a CDC-sponsored program for over a decade called what we call CRI, Cities Readiness Initiative. And that program requires us to be prepared to respond to any public health emergency. And over this last 10 years or so, we have developed a number of plans. We have trained with our local and state partners. We have exercised with them. You'll see one, we mentioned anthrax is a popular topic that we exercise on. And we practice dispensing antitoxins, antibiotics, and more recently with some vaccines. Next slide, please. I wanted to just use, or at least define a couple words that I will use over the next few minutes, and maybe it'll be on television soon. I think it'll be the latest words. Pods, points of dispensing. So I'll be using two terms, closed pods and open pods. And simply put, closed pods are not open to the public, they're for some private entity, and the open pods are the reverse. They are open to the public. And there are lots of pods, as you'll see on the next slide. Previously, our process looked like this. We would activate the Strategic National Stockpile, the SNS, which is a federal program whereby various supplies, vaccines, or antibiotics could be brought in. In fact, they state that they can deliver these anywhere within 12 hours in the US to us. They would come into the state, you'll follow the flow chart. Some of that is given to some of our local partners like Sandoval County, Rio Rancho, Torrance County, et cetera. But the bulk of those supplies comes to us, and we have a intermediate distribution site, we call it, where we repackage it. And then you'll see all of those little squares are pods. And there are various pods that we would supply to the far right in red are all the hospitals. So our job is to supply to them the antibiotics, et cetera, that they may need for their hospitals. It's repackaged, it's brought to them, et cetera. To the far left in the green, there's various other pods, including CABQ departments, P&M, UPS, FedEx, and others that are involved in our program. And then some other pods, the Sunport, and we used to deliver to what we call the Southeast Pod, which was the base and Sandia Labs. We don't do that currently. And then to some federal pods. And then we get to the open pods in the middle. And those open pods are the mass dispensing, programs that we would try to reach the entire, residents of the city. On the next slide, you will see that, and I know it's hard to see here. I don't expect you to read that because I can't read it. But we have established over 40 pods. We're now up to about 48 pods over the last 10 years across the city that we can potentially use in order to provide whatever, like I said, antibiotics or vaccines, to the public. Next slide, please. And in the last 2 years or so, the CDC asked us to begin planning for vaccine dispensing to be ready for a pandemic. So this is the front cover of one of the plans, but there's a number of plans for that. And on the next slide, you will see that we've made some preparations, including the plans, training, exercising. But on the left, you'll see we have some coolers, refrigerators, if you will, in a very controlled environment where we could store vaccines. We estimate that we can store about 58,000 units of the Pfizer in those coolers. On the right side, those are portable or mobile cooler boxes where we would take the vaccines out to a pod site. Each one has a thermometer and sensors on them so that we are tracking the temperature at all times. And that we have sort of a chain of custody, if you will, of who handles it and where it goes and so forth. On the next slide, you'll see where we've been planning starting about 5 months ago. Some of those same terms, some of those same places, but we wanted to take a look at what we thought it would look like when the vaccines finally arrived, or what we preferred that it looked like, based on an equity and inclusion framework. We began to prioritize who we thought needed the vaccine. And you'll see in the far left, we picked healthcare. And then going to the right, you'll see we've got other critical people, elderly, homebound, those experiencing homelessness, et cetera. And then moving far to the right with various closed pods, and then eventually to the open mass dispensing pods. We started this again five and a half months ago with, I like to joke, 64 unknowns. After 3 months, we were down to 50 unknowns. So this has been unveiling to us as we moved along in the process for our planning to be ready for any scenario that might occur at this time. On the next slide, you'll see that our planning was pretty spot on. This is the current CDC's phased plan, which we're now operating under. Phase 1A, the healthcare industry, long-term care facilities is in that also. And then the other phase 1B, those with a lower risk, et cetera. And then down to phase 2, continuing with a lower risk, and then phase 3 to the general public. On the next slide, you will see, looking at that on the lower graph there, we are in just the upward trend of that as we start this month. And the vaccine will be increasing over the rest of this month and into the next month. And then 3 or 4 months after that, we believe it will decrease over time and then stabilize in the fall. Next slide, please. Currently, the allocations that we have, and you've probably heard and seen about this already this week, but on a far upper left, you'll see this week we expected 17,550 doses, which in fact did arrive. They're given to 6 distribution sites who then help get it out to other sites. Next week, you'll see we're expecting. And I should state here that all of this is a very fluid situation, and these numbers can change and dates can change, et cetera. But it's the best we know at this moment. So next week, Pfizer, also next week, Moderna, and we don't know how many of that will come in. And then the week after that, some more Pfizer. And on the next slide, you will see those 6 sites that they're spread across the state. And then again, those 6 help dispense that out to some of the other facilities, some of their sister facilities, et cetera, to spread that out. And again, 17,550 doses doesn't go too far, but it is a start, and we're excited about that. On the next slide, you'll see that how it's represented in a hub and spoke system with a central cold storage unit here in the city, and then that is dispensed out to the medical sites and then over time to other providers to get this out across the state. Now, as we get to current planning, on the next slide, the pods, as I mentioned again, we have selected a number of pods to work on at this time. You'll see we're working with a local school district. Some schools are potentials there, senior affairs, family and community, to using various centers across the city, spread out so that there's equal access for people to reach these sites. On the next slide, you'll see how we put this on mapping. Here at OEM, we have divided the city up into quadrants, to make sure that every quadrant gets the equal access, equal amount of facilities, et cetera, for everyone. And so if you take a look at those 12 pods that we've selected right now, and we place these on a social vulnerability index, and we think that we have done well in picking sites where people would have ready access, those that didn't have transportation and other needs, to make sure that we were providing ready access to everybody. On the next slide, those same pods dispensed across the city. I know it's hard, it's kind of busy. In those quadrants, this time it's laid on a incidence of poverty map, just to make sure that we had placed our pods on bus routes in various parts of the city and spread out again, so everybody has equal access. It doesn't mean we'll use all of those at one time. Those are dependent upon the amount of vaccine that comes in. If we get 1,000, we won't open 12, it might be 1. If they gave us 500,000 doses, we might have to open all 40 or 45 of them. And then on the next slide, every one of the plans has a, excuse me a moment, one time I forget. You'll see that each of those sites has a walkthrough component if needed. And on the next slide, there's also a drive-through planning process for various lanes of traffic, et cetera. So those are all under planning right now, and we believe that we are almost ready for those when we're called upon to help dispense this vaccine. And finally, on the last slide, we are using our city's crisis management software called WebEOC to not only track information at various pod sites when they will open up, but the amount of vaccine received, dispensed, on hand, and provide what we call a common operating picture. And with that, I'll take some questions if there are some.
Councilors, any question? Again, please do use the raise the hand function. Councilor Bassan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to say, Director, thank you for this. This is really exciting just to see coming off of flu season and the drive-through flu shot clinics that we've seen around town, and now rolling into the COVID vaccines. I was talking to someone earlier today that phrases it as there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think that this is definitely it. And it sure doesn't appear that you have been doing nothing in the last 6 months. So thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilors, any more questions? Well, Mr. Ebner, I really do appreciate this. I'm more of a visual person myself, so seeing it as a presentation mapped out and kind of the plan that we have moving forward is much appreciated, as well as some of the deep history. So thank you so much. I hope that many of my constituents who've been asking some of the same questions have gotten their answers today through your presentation. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate the in-depth presentation. Oh, Councilor Bassan, one quick question.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Director, can we get a copy of that, or is that just kind of top secret? You don't want us to know?
I believe you were sent one, but there should be one available on the site. Yes.
Okay, I didn't see it in the iPad, but I'll double check everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ebner. And just for councilors to know, it should have been emailed to you all, so you should find it in your emails. Thank you. Next up, we have Chief Dow with AFR.
Good afternoon, councilors, Committee Chair Sena. Thank you for having us. I've got the Fire Marshal, Deputy Chief Gene Gallegos here with me. He's going to talk about a couple of things, including the public health order. We can go to the next slide. So some of our big accomplishments for 2020, obviously with emergency response, we obtained our full EMS transport authority. So I want to thank you. The council supported us with that. And the beginning of this year, we ended up getting that full authority, which helped us to split some calls with Albuquerque Ambulance and just make the system in general more efficient. And then we talked about that before in one of our meetings. And you can see how the call volume is actually just significantly dropped. We also coordinated with city security for specific responses, mostly those unknown calls that happen on Central, where it might be someone that's just down and out on the streets, and do they need help? Do they not need help? And City Security is already in the vicinity and they can assist with those. And it's been a great partnership to have City Security working with us. Reduce call volume. So that helps out everybody, because as we have less calls, we're available for calls more often in our districts, and we're not bouncing around from different districts and trying to cover each other, which makes us more efficient. We're looking at 15,000 less calls in Albuquerque Fire Rescue in 2020 than we had in 2019. And that's a 14% drop. It's about 43 calls less each day. And again, that goes back to coordinating with Albuquerque Ambulance and City Security. COVID plays a role in that a little bit. We did see a dip in March and April, but then it just went right back to its normal levels for the rest of the year. But just being able to move those calls into other areas has really helped us out. Next slide. So our fire responses, and I'm proud to tell you, we've talked about it before, but we did maintain our ISO 1, and we actually improved the score. So when we received that initial score more than 5 years ago, we improved it by 2.33 points. We were barely an A, which is an ISO 1 in the 90% range, and we improved that. And we're one of only 346 fire departments in the entire country that have an ISO 1. So it's a great achievement. Really proud of the staff that I have that made this possible, and everyone else's support. We also implemented new pre-incident planning software. So we have cell phones on every single one of our field apparatus, which really helps. And in that, there's different apps that are downloaded on there. One of them is a First Due software, and it allows us to do live pre-incident planning when we're on scenes. And then that gets uploaded to the fire marshal's office. They approve that, and then our members have the ability to see that data real time. And what we're doing is we're sharing that with Albuquerque Police Department. In fact, we met with Chief Medina and his staff, and we found ways that we can share this information. So God forbid we do have an active shooter incident at a school or a large facility, and its pre-incident plan is complete already by our members. We share that information with PD, and they'll know exactly where room 206 is at a specific high school, whereas you would never know about it before. And we're not going into it blind. So it's a great feature. We're really happy to share that with the police department as well. It also dumps a lot of data from different organizations in the city. So we know exactly what maybe remodels were done on a facility, if it has photovoltaic or solar panels, where the fire department connections are, where the electrical panels are. All that's already loaded into it. In fact, it has everybody's residential home in there as well. So I can tell you, whichever counselor, if I looked up your address, I would be able to tell you how big your structure is, when it was built, if you've had additions onto it, things like that. So we're not going to these incidents blind, and really helps out our firefighters. As far as wildland deployments, we had over 10,000 hours of our firefighters on deployments this year. We went to California, we went to Oregon, we went to Arizona, we went all over New Mexico, and really played a big role in extinguishing these large-scale fires in the Southwest. We provided fire suppression, obviously, but we also sent out some resources for COVID decontamination services. Next slide. One of the greatest things I think we've been able to do this year is new Fire Station 9, which is really needed, and that was a great achievement. With that, we've got a brand new station, and we added another apparatus to that, which I'll get to in the next slide. We also have new equipment installed in all of our fire stations. So I can say that all of our stations have washers and dryers, or are getting the final hookups to get those. We also are putting cascades to refill our air bottles. It's sad to say that just a couple of years ago, we only had 2 fire stations where our members could fill up their SCBA bottles. So you can imagine, if you're on a dumpster fire, a car fire, you've got to actually drive across several districts to fill up that air bottle. And we're putting them in almost every single fire station that we have now, so they can remain in district and continue to use that SCBA. With council assistance, we've been able to remodel a number of our stations. So thank you so much, Councilor Borrego. We did the landscaping at Station 18 and some small remodels around there. Station 16, Councilor Jones has been phenomenal in new floors, bathrooms, bunker gear storage area, which is almost complete. Thank you, Councilor Jones, for that. And then, of course, Brush 16 as well. Station 13, a new parking lot with Councilor Gibson's assistance. Station 9, the Cascade, again, Councilor Gibson helping out, and then Councilor Jones and Harris helped out with the new fitness equipment for Station 9. Thank you for all of that. drive pads. We had a number of the front driveways at fire stations that were broken, they were cracking, and they needed to be repaired. We got money from the state legislature, so we did stations 4, 13, 15, and 17 this year. Next slide. Gosh, every single one of them, I feel like there's like huge accomplishments. The new fleet facility, which was absolutely amazing, that we were able to get the funding to do that through council's help as well. We're able to do all of our repairs in-house. We don't have to actually ship it out to another agency. Of course, it costs us more money. We control that cost. We control the everything about it. Just the customer satisfaction with our firefighters. We control everything that is involved with our mechanics in doing the work on our vehicles. We also have a new software to track all of our repairs. So our firefighters out in the field, they have to do a daily inspection, but they're also, with that inspection, it's a new software that uploads into the fleet facility. So it helps them to understand exactly when those repairs need to be made and the status of those repairs. So there's better coordination between our mechanics and our drivers out in the field. New apparatus. I think some of you saw that we had a new airboat, and we were able to train with that during the summer. So we worked with APD, so really appreciate their help to getting our members trained. New wildland resources, 5 new engines, 2 new rescues, 2 beautiful brand new platform aerial apparatus at stations 21 on the west side and 13 in Midtown, and then 1 hazmat squad and 2 battalion chief trucks. And of course, new ladder 9, which is in service. We ordered a new truck, but they're operating out of a spare apparatus right now. It is the only aerial apparatus that is east of Wyoming Boulevard at Manal and Eubank. It's the 8th ladder company in the city of Albuquerque. And again, this new truck will actually improve our ISO score. So the next time we get evaluated in a few years, we'll have a better score than we had the last time. Next slide. 2020's training accomplishments. So obviously COVID plays a big role in everything that we do and how we interact. We couldn't have firefighters come to our fire academy like they normally would, so we had to find new ways to train them. Thankfully, the EMS Bureau allowed us to do more online CEs for our firefighters and paramedics. And then ISO altered the restrictions for our fire training. Typically, they'd had to come up here for 18 hours to our fire academy and do hands-on training, but ISO allowed us to get away with this in 2020, which they did for every fire department. We graduated 2 fire cadet classes. It's 47 new firefighters. We still have a couple of them up here at our fire academy finishing their EMT basic class, but that was the 95th and 96th cadet class. The 97th cadet class, we have open enrollment starting next month. We held all of our promotional tests for each rank. So that was drivers, lieutenants, captains, and battalion chiefs. And then we used some additional funding from CARES for a new multimedia facility at our fire academy so we can do more remote training. We just don't know how this is going to work out in the future with COVID and when we'll be able to get back to our normal of having our firefighters here at the academy. So we had to find a way around it because we don't think those exceptions are going to be there in 2021. And with this, now we can do interactive training from all of our fire stations. It's kind of nice too because it does keep them in their district for their training as well. You can imagine coming from station 16 in the Heights all the way to the fire academy on the far end of the city. It does have an effect on our response times because someone else has to respond into that area. So this allows us to do the same training right from the firehouse. Next slide. And I'm going to turn this next 2 slides over to Deputy Chief Gene Gallegos.
Well, councilors, thank you for your time. So I've already gone over kind of the public health order, but this one is specific to AFR and the Fire Marshal's office. Again, our accomplishments during this pandemic has been, pretty remarkable. All the work that all departments have done as far as getting out to the public, educating them, and trying to assist them and keeping the doors open and keeping them, being in kind of a positive, even though as bad as the pandemic is. So, but specific to AFR and the inspections division, we've handled going off 4,000 interactions with the public and over 250 complaints. Again, as complaints come in through 311 or through our office, we try and identify, go out there and investigate and handle whatever situation that people have concerns about. So and then handing out also over 500 warnings to businesses. And yeah, that's one thing we're about, compliance and education and ensuring that they do understand the public health order. Again, it changes every 2 weeks, as you all know. So we're always adapting to this public health order. And we're hoping that it goes from red to yellow sooner rather than later. And we'll continue to do our best to get out to the public. Again, all the other departments that are working with us, code enforcement have done a great job, environmental health, city security, park and rec, APD, again, coordinating with all of them and working as a team to continue to educate and keep Albuquerque on the right path of moving to yellow at this time. So moving on to the ADAPT program. Again, the guys in the ADAPT program have a captain, a lieutenant, and 2 inspectors continually working hard on those problem properties and educating those property owners on first of all, there's a lot of property owners that, maybe they don't realize, or they just turn a blind eye to the property that they own that is causing a nuisance for the city of Albuquerque and the citizens. Right now, this year, the ADAPT program has engaged with 426 properties. 38 of them are currently in the program, and we've cleared 171, and that's either by working with other departments to take over because they just didn't meet the program's criteria, or we have cleared them on our own, which right now we've cleared 27 properties that have been in the program, been given a nuisance abatement agreement, and they have completed the nuisance abatement agreement. And now we just move into the phase of monitoring them, making sure that they do not turn back into a nuisance property and hold true to following the rules and regulations of the city of Albuquerque. So next slide, please. Then the fire marshal's office as a whole, both the plans checking division that handles all the new construction that's happening in the city of Albuquerque. And so when I first took over as the fire marshal and our chief Dowd took over, and the mayor, one of our biggest goals was to drop the inspection times for plan review and for final inspection. So since then, over the last year, and adding 4 more inspectors to the plans checking division for new construction, our time frame in FY19 was 7 days minimum if you turned in a new construction plan. And then as soon as, and our goal was 3 to 5 days turnaround time. So you turn in your plan to build a new structure business. Our goal was to have it back to you in 3 days. Right now we're at 2 days, if not the next day. So again, we've superseded our goal, and I'm really excited about that. Final inspection, whenever you're done building your new business and you want to open your doors to start making money in the city of Albuquerque, in 2019, it used to take 7 to 14 days to get that final inspection done and scheduled. Our goal was to get it down to 3 to 5 days at the most. In 2020, we are currently at 1 to 3 days to schedule an inspection, if not the next day. So again, I'm really proud of my guys. They've trained very hard, and they are working with the business community as much as they can to get their doors open and to help them make money and be successful in the city of Albuquerque. And then the other side of my inspections division, which handles existing structures, in 2019, we introduced, or in 2020, we introduced new technology, iPads, cell phones that have Wi-Fi capability, and then also a new program, which is Image Trend, a program that's really streamlines the inspection process. So in 2019, we were doing about 250 to 350 inspections per month. I was hoping to boost that with the new technology and new program up by about 100 per month. Well, this year, before COVID hits and even throughout COVID, the inspectors are doing 500 to 600 inspections per month. That's on top of the COVID public health order enforcements. So again, all the guys are working extremely hard, and they are superseding my expectations, and I'm very grateful for all of their hard work. So, and now I turn it back over to Chief Dowd.
Next slide, please. So what we've got for 2021, first is a new training building. So we're still in the process of getting this built. They should start construction on it in the next few weeks. But like I said before, with ISO, we're required to do 18 hours of training at our fire academy. It can get a little boring. Most of our senior members have seen all the facilities that we have here. We've got to challenge them and make sure they can continue to improve their craft. So we have a new training building coming. It's a 2,000 square foot steel structure, and we can modify the interior of it. We can smoke it out. We'll have furniture inside and make it a challenging environment for them. In FY21, One, we got the behavioral health clinician, and we have a lieutenant that's over peer support as well. So we'll be hiring that new behavioral health clinician here in the next few months. We're excited about that. We're continuing to work on our strategic plan. We've been working on this strategic plan for about 14 months right now, and we're still a year out from that. What it basically is, it's working through the CPSC. It identifies strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for our organization. When we finish that strategic plan, there's an entire process that we'll have to go out to California, and basically before a board, we'll have a hearing, and they'll actually evaluate our strategic plan. We'll be, at that point, one of only 100 departments in the entire country that has a strategic planning process through the CPSC and an ISO 1 as well. So we're looking forward to finishing that as well. We're also going to look at relocating some specialty apparatus within the city. We've got 2 hazardous materials teams, and they're both right next to each other. And we've got to expand our capabilities, because as the city starts to grow, we've got to take the resources that we have and make sure we're making the best out of them. We're going to continue to work on reducing response times. So we signed a contract with NFORS, the National Fire Operating Reporting System, and they're going to help us to dump some of the information that we have from our report software and our CAD, and that'll help create some analytics that we can then identify areas for improvements. Basically, what it'll help us do as well is every firefighter in the station will be able to see what their truck's response times are. Firefighters, if you haven't figured it out already, are very competitive. And so every shift, it's going to be very competitive to see who can get out the door the fastest and have the best response times as well. So we're channeling that energy in a very good way. But it's hard for us to ask them to work on response times when we can't get a clear picture of what that data looks like. And that's what NFORS is going to do for us. With some additional money from the states, we have a new radio system coming online, and then a new fire station alerting system, a new CAD system, or computer aided dispatch system, which we're working on with APD. It'll be a joint CAD system. And then finally, we've just got some new EMS initiatives as well. The tactical EMS with Albuquerque Police Department, finding ways that we can make that more efficient, and some alternative transport programs that we're working on, some of it in our HARP program as well. So that's what we have for 2020 and 2021, and we'll stand for some questions.
All right, councilors, any questions or comments? All right, well, thank you so much. I do have a few questions. Some of these will probably need in-depth one-on-one possibly, but I'm curious on some of the staffing of how many drivers, paramedics, or firefighters we have. If you can get that to me, Chief Dow, at some point, anytime on your convenience, that would be great. I also had a question for Deputy Chief Gallegos. I know that some of my constituents had some questions about smoke detectors and the program that the fire marshal offers. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, absolutely. So in the fire marshal's office, we do work with Red Cross, and we're able to provide anybody that's would like up to 3 smoke detectors installed in their house. We can't remove old smoke detectors, but we could, 1, replace the 9-volt battery, or 2, install up to 3 new smoke detectors that have been provided to us by a grant from Red Cross. So again, we just have to gather some information. We also give you a little bit of a safety training in your house and help you develop an escape plan. And again, it goes with our whole educational program with the Fire Marshal's Office and Albuquerque Fire Rescue. So, and then we have you just sign the document saying that you received the smoke detectors were installed in your house, and we send that documentation to Red Cross as part of our agreement with them.
Thank you for that information. I just know that as we're going into winter, that it is a risk, and we hope that our residents are also checking their batteries with their smoke detectors. I want to really say thank you to you both, Chief Dow and Deputy Chief Gallegos, on this presentation, and really thank you to the firefighters also for everything that they've done throughout the years, and also spending 10,000 hours of volunteering to our neighbors in neighboring states. So thank you so much for that. Councilors, any more questions before I let them go? All right, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is OC 18, the 2019 CPOA semi-annual report. I move a receipt be noted. Thank you, Councillor Bassan. Councillors, any questions or comments? Mr. Harness, since you are here, would you like to give an overview of just the report before we take a roll call on this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, we're just detailing the numbers as we have them for 2019. It's actually turned into quite an arduous task because of the data from APD. We have to do this manually, so it's a manual pull for us to perform encapsulate the report. Just last week, I was looking at our 2020 numbers, and we have an intake of 534 complaints, of which about 290 have open investigations for 2020. So our numbers are increasing. And I did just today put in the requisition for the 2 additional investigator positions approved in the 2021 fiscal budget. So I thank you for that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Harness. That was actually my next question in talking about, that this report is a bit dated, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this meeting in public safety, is to see a timeline to get more updated information. So those numbers are actually helpful. Is there a timeline as to when we'll get another report?
Chair Sena, I believe we should have the first 2020 report, so January through June. We should have that to you next month.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Harness. I do appreciate you, and I know that we had some discussion, especially in terms of the staffing, so I just appreciate all the time that you and also some of the volunteers that are committed to the CPOA, so thank you. With that, Ms. Montoya, will you call a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Councillor Bassan?
Yes.
Councillor Benton?
Yes.
Councillor Davis? Councillor Davis? Okay, let's go on to Councillor Jones.
Yes.
Councillor Sena?
Yes.
Councillor Davis? That passes on a 4-0 vote. I got you, Councillor Davis.
Thank you. I apologize, Councillor Ben. I saw your hand raised at the last minute. Did you have anything to note?
No, that's okay. I could probably address it in the next item. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up on the agenda is OC 19, the CPOA Board Policies and Procedures. I move a receipt be noted. Thank you, Councillor Bassan, for that second. Councillors, any questions? I do believe we have someone here that wishes to speak on this as well. Mr. Eric Olivas?
Yes, I'm here.
Before we go to you, Mr. Olivas, I would like to have Mr. Harness kind of give an overview of this as well, and then we'll go to you.
Chair Sena, actually, Eric Olivas is a member of the Oversight Board. We also have Chair Dr. Cass, who's in attendance, and also Member Galloway. The large item changes for the policies and procedures as they're being reviewed for you were updates to the ethical standards by which the board will comport themselves, and then some new review standards for individual investigations and complaint access.
Thank you for that. Mr. Olivas, did you have anything to add?
Not really. I appreciate you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee for having this item on the agenda and allowing me the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to be present to answer any questions and make sure that we had an ongoing dialogue between the board and the city council. And I think that these meetings can be a great opportunity to have that dialogue. In this instance, if there are any questions on this, there's three of us that are available to answer any questions. But I think my main interest in being here was just to keep an ongoing dialogue. We really appreciated Council President Davis coming to our meeting last week. I think that was a great gesture on the part of the council, and we wanted to make sure that we return the gesture, and we are looking to be present at these meetings in an ongoing manner so that we have a good dialogue between the council and the board going forward. Otherwise, I stand for any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you for that, Mr. Olivas. Councilor Benton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I suppose this question is for both Mr. Harness and Mr. Olivas. What can you enlighten us on with regard to this question that's been raised, at least by some, as to the a procedure for an individual member of the board to approach and ask for specific investigatory work as opposed to actions of the entire board?
Well, Chair Sena, Councilor Benton, it is my opinion that the board is an oversight board and should act as a body. So individual inquiries into one particular investigation, I think, should be a board action. However, to remedy this issue, the investigative materials are being made available to all the board members 10 business days prior to their final review decision. So that's how we've rectified that problem at this point.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harness. And while I've got you, just from the previous item, the manual pull from APD, what's the fix for that? That sounds like obviously an IT type thing, but what's the fix for that?
Chair Sena, member Councilor Benton, the cure is the new software management, case management system, which will be coming out in fiscal year 21. There's a transition from IA Pro to Benchmark, so that essentially right now, our data analyst has to run SQL queries that don't reflect the data from the APD side as opposed to the CPOA side, and we're unable to verify the data on the APD side. So that's where the manual pull comes in, so that we can verify the data that we produce for the semi-annual reports. I was in a planning meeting for Benchmark last week. The CPOA and internal affairs portions of that case management software should be online at the end of the second quarter of next year.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Harness.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Davis, you're still muted. There we go.
We'll try that again. Sorry. I'm plugging in from somewhere new today, so my apologies. It's on my end. I just wanted to say, I see members Galloway and Dr. Cass, the chair, some others are with us, and I just want to echo member all of us and say, and I encourage other counselors to do it. At the invite of the board, I appeared last week and just got to see how their progress is going, and I think it was very enlightening for all of us. I think we all share the board's frustration that the process to appoint members to fill vacancies is let me just say this, it takes too long. It's a lengthy process. We have a long list of people who have applied, and that takes a lot of staff time from our staff just to go through that. More than 70 people, as I recall, applied last year when we didn't have any vacancies. And then, of course, that list has to be revisited each time there might be a vacancy with new background checks and new interviews. And quite frankly, it's hard to get interviews for potential candidates in front of counselors and in front of in front of board members. And so I want to encourage the council, just as a conversation item for the moment, to think about with our friends at the CPOA, how we might revisit the CPOA ordinance, and particularly how we appoint members. I think the answer is it's not working. I think there have been a number of attempts to try to figure out how to find the right balance of members. But quite frankly, we have some vacancies, and we don't have enough members to meet the, say, geographic diversity that's required, for example. And it's honestly no one's job to go out and actively recruit and find the right number of people in the Northwest quadrant and the Northeast quadrant in time to do that and look at those vacancies. So I just want to say thank you to the members of the board who participated in that conversation. Just for members of the council, I want to put a marker there. And for those of you who are interested in this, hope you'll join me hopefully over the break and early next year for us to revisit this so that we can ensure that we have a full board with all the tools they need. And I think the new, Madam Chair, if I may, just to finish, and I'll be quiet, I think the new revelations from the new monitors report and the changes at APD on how force review have changed in the last year or so highlight that we ought to not just have CPOA on the table and how we make that more robust, but I think the council ought to step in at this point, be more deliberate, more involved, and take a real look at the whole force review process from soup to nuts, and see if it is time for us to revisit this whole process. Quite frankly, I think it's too complicated. There can be as many as 20 different steps just on the APD side alone. And then asking Director Harness and his team to go back and look at all of those steps after they've had all those other eyes on them and do a whole nother review is a lot of work, quite frankly. And as we see, every time there's a new step, there's a new opportunity to miss something. So I'm quite frankly not satisfied with the way it works. I want the CPOA board to know that we take that seriously. And for those of you on the council who are interested, I hope you'll join me in helping us figure out a better strategy to do this for 2021. So thank you for letting me give a speech, Madam Chair. I'll go back to my quiet corner over here. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Benton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks, Councillor Davis, for that, pointing that out. With regard to the past applicants, I was always under the impression that we were kind of keeping a bench. In other words, the top prospects who didn't make it last time, that we would be looking instead of reinventing the process every time. Am I wrong about that? I'm asking staff or Mr. Ernest or anybody. I thought we were, once we've gone through 80 applicants, and let's say we have 10 people who are perfectly qualified, would those people be in line for the next round of nominations to the agency?
Madam Chair, I can answer that question if you like. Thank you. Councilors, it is true we do kind of keep a log of potential candidates from our previous scoring. Of course, we can't control what kind of vacancy we need to fill if that requires a more diverse appointment. Sometimes the people that are in line don't exactly match that. We try and do our best to allocate that evenly through the city. The other part of it is we do have them in line. However, they haven't been vetted yet in front of councilors or members of the CPOA board. So that also takes a little time to coordinate.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilors, any more questions? Or I also want to give an opportunity for the other CPOA members if they choose to give a comment. All right. Ms. Montoya, can you do the roll call vote?
Sure. Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
and that passes on a 5-0 vote.
All right, we're going to move on to our next agenda items. Counselor Bassan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to R-123, setting policy for interim appointments of Albuquerque police chiefs, I would like to motion for a 30-day deferral. But I do want to just make sure to mention, I hope for the administration to know, and just paying attention to what I was looking at and researching. It's been 96 days since the retirement was announced of Chief Geyer, and that same day was the interim chief was appointed, Chief Medina. So I just, I know that I've talked with several today, and I would like to motion for a deferral so that we can have some extra time to talk with administration and figure out a middle ground on how best to go about doing this for everybody.
All right, I'm just going to take that as a comment. Counselor Jones, is that a second or is that a?
That is, I would second that motion.
All right, thank you. Questions or counselors, any other comments or questions or anything from the administration? All right, we'll do a roll call vote on the deferral.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
and Counselor Senna.
Yes.
And that passes on a 5-0 vote.
All right, thank you. And I know typically we don't actually have anything else on the agenda, but because we don't have a council meeting until the next year, I wanted to give this opportunity. I believe Councillor Bassan had a few questions for the administration.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do, and I don't anticipate being able to necessarily get an answer right now. I know it's without notice, but if we can at least start the ball rolling on the conversation with the announcement of the new Chief of Public Safety. There's many people that are reaching out, asking questions. I have several questions. You know, I would love for us to be maybe at the council meeting in January if we are able to do that, or at the next Public Safety Committee meeting, to get some information, particularly about how far the outreach will go for applications to be received. Is this just statewide? Is this nationwide? And I know that on the listing, it said that the salary is to be determined by, I believe it was by experience, and what the job description will end up being. But I think that it's going to benefit the council to know what maybe a minimum and maximum salary range is, considering that we just finished the budget process. And this was not mentioned to us before. We had no idea. And I think that it's also important to know where the administration is going to see the money coming from. So for this range of salary to pay for this position, I think it's going to be important of where is that money going to get covered. And when is the hiring date hopeful? So is this something in the near future? Is this in the next 30 days, 90 days, 6 months? What is kind of some information of the basic, and you know, what, where, when, why, and I guess not who yet, because that doesn't make sense. But I would really be grateful if we can get some of that information early on next year when we come back, please.
Council Chair, Senna and Counselor, I'd like to know that the administration actually had looked at hiring this when we first came in, hiring for this position. So it was advertised. We never really found anybody that was a good fit, and we've continued to look. But what we just recently did is we posted to the position to see what comes in and to get an idea of see if anybody else might be interested. But some of the other questions I can definitely get back to you. I just wanted to let you know it's not really a new position. It was something that was considered, that was part of that we looked at when the administration first came in. But I'll get answers to the other questions for you.
Councillor Benton, did you have a question?
Yes, just also for Mr. Padilla along those lines, Madam Chair. So how does this, I guess, not to put you on the spot, Mr. Padilla, but the question that's being asked is how does this fit in with what in the budget we're calling the new department? And, you know, or since it preceded the new department, is it not really relevant to that? And is the position basically, it's the way it reads on the face of it, it's a supervisor of public safety.
Chair Senna and Councillor Benton, that's a great question. Let me do some research on that and I can get back to you and I'll see how it fits in with the new department. So I'd be happy to get back to you.
Thanks, and I understand. I take you obviously at your representation, which is this is something that the administration was interested in for some time, and so maybe we're chronologically a little offset here, but I would like to understand that better myself, since I was sort of caught off guard by it myself. Thank you.
We have Councillor Jones and Councillor Davis also wanting to ask questions relating to this topic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make one, maybe a correction in Mr. Padilla's statement. This is a new position. Having a position being contemplated does not mean it's already a position. So I think we need to be very clear here that it might be a position in the administration's mind, but it is a new position. So just want to make it really clear that there's a big difference here. So sorry, Mr. Padilla, but thank you.
Councillor Davis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask Mr. Padilla if you could help us. Can you clarify for us? I know Mr. Damon Martinez has been considered the mayor's chief public safety advisor for a number of years. Is this in addition to that position, or is this replacing Mr. Martinez, or can you clarify the difference in those roles?
Chair Senna and Councillor Davis, I don't believe it is. I'm not sure though. I'd have to get back to you with that. That's not what I've heard. So, but when I get that information, I'll let you know, and I'll get back to the entire council and let them know as well.
Thank you.
All right, just one quick question from myself. From my understanding, we have had similar positions like this, or the position itself, in previous administrations, Chief of Public Safety. I believe Mr. Darren White, and before him was also Mr. Dinelli, from my understanding. Is that correct, Mr. Padilla?
Chair Senna, yes, that is correct. I know that they were a little bit different. I believe from what my memory was is that Pete Dinelli's position was a little bit different from what Darren White's position was, like how it was structured, but those positions have existed in previous administrations.
And this position is similar or different to those two?
It would be, I mean, they were all kind of similar, so it would be similar, but I wouldn't say that it would be set up in the exact same way as the other two. But what I can do is I can get some more information to you and I can provide that to you.
Thank you. Councilors, any more questions? I appreciate Mr. Padilla for sitting in the hot seat on this one and taking these questions. And also to councilors and staff, because I know this wasn't on the agenda, but I wanted to ensure that that these questions were asked before the new year, since we don't have a council meeting until next year. So for public safety, I want to thank you all for joining in. And since we won't see you here in public safety, I hope you all have a happy holiday and a happy new year. With that, there be no further business. I call the Public Safety Committee meeting adjourned.